Hi, and welcome to the Sabbath Christian Church's online sermon. During this time of the year, we keep several holy days. We keep the Feast of Trumpets, Atonement, the Feast of Tabernacles, and the Last Great Day. 4 holy days now. Not everyone in the world keeps these. These are God's holy days. It says that these are the feast days of the Lord. And it starts off with the Sabbath, and it goes on to all these holy days. And in Leviticus it says, which you shall proclaim in their season. Now, this is the way that we worship God. But most places don't. Most religions don't. Jewish, Orthodox, and others keep the holy days, but not too many other groups do. Now, why do so few people keep, why don't more people keep this holy day instead of other days, from Sunday to Halloween and Easter? The latter are not the days the Creator wants people to worship Him on. It's not the holy days the Creator gave us. So there are reasons why people do not worship God on these holy days or in any way. Well, even in one small way they don't worship Him, which, as James says, you break one, you break all the commandments, in different language. They have other gods. Why do people have gods? Why do people have to have something to worship? Well, it's a linguistic thing, and it's also a natural thing with people. The word worship comes from the Old English worshipy, meaning worship, honor, shown to an object. So the word worship in English means worshiping an object, which is perfect because most people worship an object and not the Creator. They worship something that's created instead of the one that created it. Now, it has an etymology as worthiness or worthship. For people, what they worship is something that they think is worthwhile. Worthiness is the English worship. Now, all languages have worship. We're dealing with English, but all languages have worship. Now, it's to give at its simpler worth to something, to put it in newer English rather than the Old English. Now, in the Hebrew, it has a different meaning than in the English, where we, although it does have something to do in English in the same way. Now, the Hebrew is shachar, and it means to depress, feel lowly. Now, when we worship something, or we worship God, we look at the thing and say, that's better than me. So whatever people worship, they consider the thing, or God, the Creator, something more important. They feel lowly. And in the Hebrew, it means to prostrate oneself. Get down on hands and knees, on your full body, and bow down before the thing worshipped. In homage, in the Hebrew, to royalty or to God. So on these holy days, back in those days, they started off the holy days, some say, by prostrating themselves to it. Now, the abad also is part of the root word, is to work, serve, labor, to do worship, minister, to work in ministry, to reduce to servitude, enslaved, cause to serve. Person who worship puts everything, that thing that they're worshiping, or the eternal God, the Creator, ahead of everything else, and works toward them, for them, and they walk with God. Why do people need a God to worship? Well, God created language and put worship into the vocabulary. And we learned in linguistics that words change their meanings. They evolve, if you will. So the worship of God, the capital W, worship of God, meant just to worship any old thing. Acts of righteousness, formal expression of reverence, adoration, devotion, respect given to a small d deity. It means adoration. Society's worship of teenagers. So we worship things like that. We worship things that we relate to, things that are so important to us. We can see, you know, the worship of teenagers. Watch what the teenagers worship. A whole lot of them. When these great singing stars come on television. Great honor, especially referring to a magistrate or mayor or king. His worship, the mayor. So people worship governing people. It's the worship of idols, veneration, adoration, glorification, thanksgiving, morning worship, worships all over the place. Pagan gods, revere, pay homage to honor, hero worship, lionize, overpraise. People have all kinds of things that they worship that you shouldn't be worshiping. It has an intense love. Eve refused to defer to the Creator when she ate the fruit that the snake highly suggested, as it refuted what God said. Said, did God say, no, you're not going to die, you'll be made wise? People are dissuaded from believing God when they hear something that appeals to them, right or wrong. And the serpent did just that and continues to do it throughout the world. God said, do not eat or touch it, or you will die. The serpent said, well, you're not going to die, for God knows that the day you eat it, your eyes will be open, and you'll be like God. Oh boy, how can you ask anything more from this serpent here, to be like God? Now, worship the serpent. She didn't bow down to the serpent in that sense, but she did what the serpent said to do. He says, the tree was good for, and she looked at it, the tree was good for food, delighted to the eyes, and desirable to make one wise. She took the fruit and ate. She worshipped the demon, the serpent, instead of God, who said, don't do that. I created you. Don't do that. She gave it to her husband. They ate, and both their eyes were opened, and they disobeyed God, and they worshipped the thing created, the snake, slithering around the world, trying to change people. There are several people who continue to disobey God early on. And here is a root disobedient person, Cain, the murderer, the root whose sin was hatred, envy of the godly. That's why he killed his brother. There's a sin of the seducers, ran greedily. It's very important. We're going to more greedily stuff later on at another time. Literally, poured forth like the torrent has burst its banks. Regardless of what it costs, the loss of God's favor and heaven, they rush after gain. More on that. Some people comprehend the Creator and the creation. They understand God's language and the sheer complexity of God, who created the air and water for food and for drink. They recognize God's love and care and His care for people, for us. We worship the God and Creator. And one of the ways that we prove that we worship Him is by keeping and worshiping Him on the holy days, not some pagan rites. Amen. And thank you for watching and listening.